Hello guys, and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be looking back at the 2021 NHL draft and picking players that I think could potentially be steals for these teams that drafted them, and maybe even impact these teams as soon as next season, because some of these players are actually pretty good, and I'm shocked that they got drafted as late as they were. But should I even be that shocked? Because the 2021 NHL draft was one that was filled with question marks and randomness because of COVID, obviously. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to be going from the player who's picked the earliest to the player who's picked the latest. So we're going to start off with the earliest pick from the 2021 draft, who I think could potentially be a steal. And that player, I think, was drafted to 20th overall to the Minnesota Wild, and that is Jesper Wallstedt. Jesper Wallstedt completely fell right into the Minnesota Wild hands. Actually, they kind of fell to the Oilers' hands when the Oilers were like, you know what? We don't want a star goalie. Who needs a star goalie? So they traded down. And Minnesota, what a good pick. What a good trade. And they got Wallstedt, who has been fantastic. And I do consider him to be a steal just because he was seen as a guy who could go super early in the draft, like top 5, top 6 caliber. And he managed to slip his way all the way to 20th and even go after goaltender Sebastian Cossa, which honestly I like Cossa. Thought Wallstedt was better, but I did like Cossa. Cossa's obviously having a rough time of it, but Wallstedt has definitely not had a rough time of it. In 22 games this season, has a .918 save percentage and is really showing that he is capable of playing with some pretty good players. He's in the SHL. This is a men's league, and he's putting up these numbers. And honestly, if Minnesota decided to bring Jesper Wallstedt into their team next season, hit the camera there, into their team next season, I think that he could hold himself. He'd be fine. I think he'd play well. But I just don't think you want to rush Jesper Wallstedt like that, play it safe. But definitely, I think Jesper Wallstedt will be a very good goalie for them in the future. And slipping all the way to number 20, Minnesota did a pretty good job here, considering that their goalies are getting older. Jesper Wallstedt will fill in that spot, I'll say 2 seasons from now, and I think he'll be absolutely great when he does. But now on to the next player who I think was a potential steal from this draft. And let me say before I say this, Dallas Stars, holy, are they good at drafting. They are so good at drafting, because the next steal that I have, and it's not the only one on this list, wow, but it is the 23rd overall pick, and that is centerman Wyatt Johnston. Wyatt Johnston is currently leading the OHL in points. Now last year, all right, he's definitely a player who was affected, whose draft position was affected by COVID, because he did not play in the OHL last season, as he was obviously with the OHL. The only professional hockey games he played was with the World Junior 18s, where he didn't even play that fantastic, only putting up 4 points in 7 games. But this season, Dallas obviously did their research, because he is leading the OHL, like I said, in 66 games, 45 goals, 78 assists for 123 points, and he really has everything that you want from a good player. He has a good shot, he's very good positionally, and he's not really bad at any one thing. He's pretty much solid at everything, and he's got good height. And I like adding this onto Jason Robertson and all their young guys who are coming up, and there's a good amount, like Ottinger, Heiskanen, Robertson, all these guys coming up, and it's a lot of people say they're getting older, but really I think they got some good young talent coming up for a team that's still doing pretty good, and definitely might not even need another major rebuild if all these guys can pan out well. But Wyatt Johnston, definitely a steal, and a guy who I think will be a very good NHLer one day. But now moving on to the next player that I think is a steal at last year's NHL draft, and that is defenseman drafted from the Anaheim Ducks, Olen Zellweger. I hope I said that right. It's a bit of a weird name. But Zellweger, originally drafted in the 2nd round, so we have moved on away from the 1st round into the 2nd round. But Zellweger, last year, again, a guy who had limited showing. You didn't get to see much of what he could do, but in his time, he went just over a point per game as a defenseman in the WHL. But this season, he is leading defenseman in points in the WHL, as in 54 games, he has 14 goals, 64 assists for 78 points, and has really just been fantastic. He's a great puck-rushing defenseman. He has elite skating, and not only is he amazing offensively, but he's also pretty solid defensively. And with Jamie Drysdale coming up and Olen Zellweger, I think I messed up that name a little bit, but I think Zellweger is capable of really making an impact to this Anaheim Ducks team as soon as next season. And I don't exactly know if he's left side or right side, but maybe he could even have him and Drysdale on a pairing. That would eventually be a very good NHL level pairing, because I think Zellweger is capable of being a very good offensive defenseman and also pretty good defensively. So that was definitely a very good pick by them. But we're going to flip the page and move on to the next player who I think is a steal, and it is another defenseman and already the last defenseman on this list. I didn't see any really big steals from late in the draft. There were a lot of steals, but top 10 steals, not really. And that is defenseman drafted from the Carolina Hurricanes in the 2nd round, Scott Morrow. Scott Morrow, what really hurt him in this draft, why he dropped, is because he didn't really play a professional league in his draft year. He was playing prep, and that definitely hurt his draft rankings, but he's been in the NCAA this year, putting up some fantastic totals with 33 points in 37 games and a solid 13 goals, and he has good height. Everything's good, and really, again, a guy who's solid at everything, as much as he's good offensively, also good defensively. And Carolina Hurricanes, a team that's already very good, what do they need? More good players, because that's what they need. But I have noticed Carolina is another team that is pretty good at drafting. But Scott Morrow, a guy who I think maybe not next year, but someday definitely could add to that Carolina defense, which is already fantastic, but could add to that and be a very good defenseman at the NHL level. But now on to the next player that I have as a draft steal, and say welcome back to Dallas, because here we go again. I have the Dallas Stars, who in the second round pick with the 47th overall pick drafted centerman / right winger from the WHL, Logan Stankoven. And what a pick, and it's funny because Logan Stankoven was supposed to go earlier in the draft than he did, and that was pretty much agreed by a lot of people. Logan Stankoven in his draft year in 6 games had 7 goals, 3 assists for 10 assists. Not a lot of games in the WHL, but man, look at those offensive numbers. That's what you like to see. And really, he's carried those offensive numbers right into a full season of the WHL, as in 57 games, he has 44 goals, 58 assists for 102 points, and that is second in the WHL in points. So he has been fantastic, and I have no idea what Dallas does. They must have some secret agency where they're like getting these prospects. They have some time travelers on their team. I have no idea. There's some time traveler scouts. That's what they have. But Dallas, the only bad thing, really, the only minor part of his game that you might be like, oh, will he pan out at the NHL level, is his height, 5'8". But, we see an increasing amount of small people coming into the NHL because physicality isn't really as big a thing anymore. It's more of like skill-based, and Logan Stankoven is filled with skill. And I think that he could definitely make an impact for Dallas next season, especially with the point totals that he's managing to put up right now. But now moving on to the 6th player that I think could be a steal at last year's NHL draft, and that is centerman from the Liga, Aatu Räty. Aatu Räty was drafted 2nd round, 52nd overall to the Islanders, and what a pick by them. So Räty, seen as a potential 1st overall pick for a while there, but then his game, he never progressed. He wasn't getting much better, and he did not make the World Junior team just because of how lackluster his play was. But he's really turned things around a ton, and I think it's one of those things where they overcompensate. He was the 1st overall pick, he dropped, but I don't think he should have been as low as he was. But Islanders, they snagged him up, and this year in 47 games, he has 13 goals, 27 assists for 40 points, and that is counting his slow start with his old Liga team where he just could not find his game. But in his new Liga team, he's been fantastic and has shown why he was at one point seen as that 1st overall pick. He's got a good shot, good stick handling, he's creative, and I do think that he will be a good NHL center one day. But the thing is, I hope that he can find that consistency. I hope he can be as consistent as he is right now. Ever since he switched Liga teams, he's been great. Again, I really hope that translates to the NHL level, because Islanders really need a young offensive forward right now, because their team is getting really old. Like, really old. And they're not making they could make the playoffs next year, but Aatu Räty would help, right? But now moving on to the next player that I think could be a steal at the NHL draft, and another team who actually had a pretty good draft, and that is the Montreal Canadiens. This is the first of 2 players that they have in this top 10, and the first one I have is centerman from the QMJHL, Riley Kidney. Riley Kidney, in his draft year, just over a point per game in the QMJHL. Kind of makes sense that he dropped this far, but this year that offense has just turned up a good amount to another level. In 57 games, he has 27 goals, 60 assists for 87 points, and he's just doing great, leading his team in points. And Kidney was originally drafted 63rd overall. I don't know if I said that already, but he's crafty, he's good stick handling, good speed, and really what the definition of a skilled forward is. And who knows, Montreal, a team whose rebuild may go faster than you'd expect, because they had a pretty good 2021 NHL draft, and they have a lot of good picks, or a lot of early picks headed up in the 2022 one. So maybe Montreal isn't as much doom and gloom as it appears, and especially with their absolutely stud steal pick that we'll get to later. But now moving on to another player that I think could be a steal from last year's draft, and this player is from a team that has already appeared on this list again. So we have another 2-time team, so another team that did pretty good in that draft, and that is the Anaheim Ducks. And the Anaheim Ducks drafted in the 3rd round, 66th overall, winger from the OHL or USDP at the time he was drafted, Sasha Pastujov. Sasha Pastujov had a really good start. He came into the OHL. He was firing on all cylinders, and really things have slowed down recently. He's managed to even out to 61 games, 34 goals, 40 assists, 74 points. So still a very solid year, but he started off really hot and cooled down a bit. But still, like, he's very good on the power play. He's very skilled, and I do think that he will be good one day. But I think he needs to find what he had early in the season, because early in the OHL season, he was absolutely dominating, and I was like, wow. And also, Sasha Pastujov was actually a guy who's supposed to go earlier in the draft than he did. So Anaheim did kind of get a pretty good steal there. Even like, if I did a video of who I think could be a steal right after the draft, Sasha Pastujov would have been on that list, because I did think he deserved to be drafted. Oh man, voice crack. Oh, I get those a lot, drafted earlier. But overall, very good and has been very good. But now on to the last two players. And we're going to move on to the 9th player that I think is a steal from last year's draft. And that is, yes, another team who is appearing for the second time. As I said earlier, Montreal. And Montreal, in the 5th round, so very late pick, drafted a forward named Joshua Roy, who is currently playing in the QMJHL and dominating. Joshua Roy, in 55 games, 40 goals, 60 assists, for 100 points, and is leading the QMJHL in points. And this is a 5th round pick. That is very impressive. He has been amazing. And last year, like, he was just over a point per game. You know, he was doing fine, but dominating this year, playing fantastic. And Montreal, again, like I said, they're not a great team, but they have a lot of good prospects coming up. And if they can keep drafting like this, drafting all these good steals like Joshua Roy, who very well projects to be a good player at the NHL level, they could really come out of this rebuild faster than I think we all expected. Because, you know, it could just, who knows? Not next year. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team next year or anything like that. But they have some good prospects on the way. And Cole Caulfield looks like he's getting it together, or has got it together for a while now. And Suzuki, they could be a good team in the future here. Like, don't sleep on Montreal yet. But Joshua Roy, dominating offensively, and definitely a player who should be good. Like, will be good. I will clip this. Will be good. He will be good. And he's showing that. And his OHL, I wonder if he'll play in the NHL before the season ends. I don't know how that works, but he will be good. All right, he will be. But now on to the last player I have on this list, and it is from my favorite team, the beautiful team, the Edmonton Oilers. All right, and from the Edmonton Oilers, with the 6th round pick, 180th overall, the latest draft steal that I have on this list, they drafted winger Matvei Petrov. I keep wanting to say Michkov. I just got that whole next year thing in my head. But Matvei Petrov, in 60 games this year in the OHL, has 38 goals, 48 assists, for 86 points, and has really been dominating. In fact, his first game in the OHL, he got a hat trick. I was watching the highlights. But Petrov, another guy like Pastujov, who started off really hot, dominated, and has cooled down a bit over the last bit, but still a player who I think projects to be a very good NHLer. And with Edmonton, they have a lot of good forwards coming up. Their defense may not great, but for a team like Edmonton, you would expect them to not have many good prospects, but they do have a lot of good prospects. Carter Savoy, Dylan Holloway, Bourgault, who could be something, and Petrov. Like, all these guys could end up being very good NHLers. And Petrov, I think he leads the pack in that case, maybe Holloway, but Petrov could lead the pack because he has just been very good and has looked like he's your typical guy who could be a good Russian goal scorer because he knows how to score. But he also gets a lot of assists. But he gets a lot of goals too. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you are still here, I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, this video, you know, we got the papers right here, the 10 picks. I don't know what I do with the intro usually. But next video, I plan on looking at some of the players who could win trophies this year. Looking at players who I think should win the trophies this year. So thank you for watching if you are still here. And I hope to see you in the next video. If you enjoyed, please like. And if you really enjoyed, maybe even subscribe. If you really enjoyed. Again, don't have to. But I will be here in the next video. I will be here next video. Obviously, I have to be the one who posting the video. I'm going to have to be there next video. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one with my classic outro here. There we go. See ya.